Okay, let's talk about how the Dejounte Murray trade looks today. I'm going to talk about the Hawks a lot, but also going to touch on the Spurs as well. As far as Dejounte is concerned, I think Atlanta got exactly what they were expecting of him, as he has almost matched Trae Young in touches per game. And when you look at the offense, it's a whole lot of pick and roll between the two of them, which I think we all kind of expected. And within that, you are getting Dejounte pull-up jumpers, as he has been one of the better mid-range shooters for the last couple of seasons. You're getting your Trae Young floaters, you're getting your Trae Young pull-up threes, you're getting moments where Dejounte or Trae can finish at the basket. There's lobs to Capella, there's kickouts to DeAndre Hunter and Aaron Holiday, Justin Holiday, John Collins. Standard stuff. To throw a couple of stats at you, number one, the Hawks are leading the NBA in pick and rolls per game. They're also last in the league in passes per game, which I think is also not really shocking because you're going to have your possessions where there's no pass. It's Trae Young shoots a floater off of a Capella screen, or a similar thing with Dejounte, or it might only be one or two passes if it's an assist or a swing to another guy, you know? As far as which ones they favor more, I honestly think it depends on the defense. Like against the Bucks, it's pull up and floater city. Against, let's say, the Celtics, there were more possessions where Dejounte was trying to get by, let's say, Grant Williams after he switched onto him. And as we all know, they needed another ball handler to take some pressure off of Trae. Now, with that said, I do think as the season goes along, we will see with their offense, what is the balance between doing just the foundation, which is those two trading screens off with each other, versus trying to implement some new things for the sake of maybe it being a little awkward now, but being better in the future. So whether that is some more off-ball actions for Trae, which was a bit of a conversation coming into the season, and I think right when the year opened up, they leaned into that a bit, and as the year's gone on, I do think it's been a little bit more of just Trae spotting up as Dejounte is doing his thing. In fact, for what it's worth, I think if you were looking for more off-ball stuff, like just curl plays coming out of the corner or whatever, I think it's been a little bit more for John Collins and Hunter and AJ Griffin than it has been for Dejounte and Trae as much. Of course, Justin Holiday is built to fly around screens off ball and all that, so we'll see there. I did also mention John Collins. I wanted to touch on him a little bit more. His shot attempts are pretty down, and the thing is, he's meant to be a guy who's your main diver to the basket, but with Capella there, the spacing is not always going to be perfect with Collins diving to the rim, and Capella also sets a lot of those screens, and so it puts Collins into a little bit more of a spot up position where, I mean, he can make an open three, and I think his percentages will be better as the year goes on because he's been a good three-point shooter the past couple of years. But, we also did just get the first John Collins trade rumor of the season because it's been like that for a minute now, like a week ago or whatever, and it's kind of awkward, man, because I do think Collins is doing what's asked of him on both sides of the floor, and he's definitely gotten better defensively from where he was at a few years ago. But, I mean, let's just call it what it is. If you were going to draw up the ideal situation for John Collins, it would not be him staring at a whole bunch of Clint Capella screens for guards. It would be him involved in those screens all the time, but it's just kind of an awkward thing right now. Sure, within that, you're still going to get your moments of him getting a lob in transition or off of a cut or an offensive rebound or getting the ball off of a switch in the post, or he'll still be setting some screens. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not like he's setting none, but I don't know, it's just a weird thing. I mean, he's taking less shots per game than DeAndre Hunter at this point. And speaking of Hunter, his trips to the line have been pretty interesting lately. And, some of that honestly is just him getting some screen plays sprinkled in for him within the Trae and Dejounte trading pick and rolls with each other. And Hunter has been busting out the handle a little bit. One that sticks out to me was in a game against the Sixers where I think he was guarded by Tobias, and he had a screen up top, and he rejected the screen, and he had a hesitation that led to just a line drive dribble into a foul, and his first step was like just fast enough to where Tobias was a little slow. It's like, okay, this is something you can build on a little more. But it's going to be a process because it's not like you can just hand the keys to Hunter for, 2 or 3 minute stretches, because it's a matter of, is he willing to take pull-ups? Is he good enough at them? Is he able to consistently beat guys off the bounce, make the split-second decision coming around screens? Like, you can apply this to pretty much anybody, but I think with Hunter especially, it's like, he's not a gunslinger from outside. He can make a three, but he's not going to hoist up a million a game. Which I guess leads to another point, because I've already seen some Hawks fans be like, man, we really miss Kevin Huerter because they're seeing how well he's playing in Sacramento, and some of that is because the Kings are putting more on his plate, to be honest. But also, like, could this team use another shooter? Yeah, probably. They are last in the league in three-point attempts, and they're first in mid-range attempts. Now, some of that's going to be because Dejounte, he does like his pull-up mid-rangers off of screens. But for what it's worth, I mean, he's upped his threes. But when you go down the roster, I mean, yeah, they could use at least one more guy who's kind of up there in 3-point attempts. Now, the hope there is that Bogdan can be that shooter since he's hurt right now. Let's get to the defense. I think the main point is that they don't want Trey to end up in any undesirable matchups, basically. And so they'll typically start him, like in the Raptors game, a lot of the time he was defending Juancho. Against the Bucks, he'll be defending like Beauchamp or Wesley Matthews, George Hill. Against the Celtics, it'll be Derek White or Grant Williams. And whenever Trey is involved in an action, it usually becomes a how do we not get him switched onto the good offensive player? And so whether that's a hedge and then get back, or Collins, Hunter, Dejounte, whoever fight around the screen. Those are two very basic descriptions of it, but yeah, they just don't want Trey to get switched on to, like, I don't know, Jason Tatum, for example. Of course, Dejounte allows this to be easier for you because you can put him on opposing guards and just feel comfortable with that. The other interesting thing has been Capella and Okongwu switching onto guards. You know, I don't have a stat of this in front of me, but I wouldn't be surprised to learn that they are among the top of the league in bigs switched onto guards, if that's a stat you can find. I mean, late in the Raptors game they just had, there were a number of possessions where Capella switched on to Van Vliet or Scotty Barnes, and he was pretty huge in them winning that game. Overall, they're 10-6, 15th in offense, 10th in defense. So that's the Hawks. I would say overall I'm like slightly above lukewarm on the team. I thought they'd be a little better on offense so far, I'll be honest. Now, Trey's also had a kind of weirdly tough shooting opening to the season, so maybe it's just simple as that. But, you know, getting Bogdan back, figuring out Collins' place in the offense a little bit more, unless he's just going to be this 12 points per game guy that just kind of does his job and sets screens. Is it possible we could get some more Trey moving off ball in any way? Like, maybe not. I don't know. Let's go on to the Spurs for a bit. Devin Vassell's averaging 20 points a game. The guy's kind of an outrageously good shooter right now. Could Devin Vassell have taken this jump if Dejounte was on the team? I mean, in terms of his catch and shoots from three, yeah, probably. But as far as the stuff off the dribble, probably not. Because a lot of those possessions would have gone to Dejounte instead, right? Trey Jones, similar to his brother, is also making a case for the assist-to-turnover ratio king. Keldon is also averaging 20 a game. His three-point attempts are through the roof compared to his first couple years. He's not the leading ball handler on the team, though. That is still Trey Jones. And so for Keldon, you're going to get some more cuts. You're going to get more off-ball actions. You'll get times where he's getting it from like Jakob Poeltl, who'll be on the top of the key or the elbow or whatever. The biggest things with Keldon are like, is his like pull-up mid-range going to become amazing, or will he get to, I don't know, 10 free throw attempts a game or whatever? This also depends on like what do the Spurs view him as long-term, but for right now, somebody's got to take shots on the team. And so I guess like looking at the Dejounte trade at large for them right now, man, I mean, look, between the contract they were going to have to pay him, the fact that it would probably make him a little too good to go for as high of a draft pick as possible, but at the same time, when you viewed the ceiling on that team, like what would it have been? Play-in tournament, maybe getting just past the play-in tournament if the development from guys like really went far, potentially pulling off some win-now moves in the process. On top of, they clearly believed that the group they had, especially because Trey Jones is a smart point guard, could handle those possessions where Dejounte is not running things. And looking at the picks, and clearly they weighed both sides and they said we would rather have the picks, more cap space, be a little worse immediately. Now, to go along with this, I'm sure they did not envision Josh Primo doing what he did, and now he's not on the team. And really this whole thing is going to come down to what they end up doing with the picks they got from Atlanta. I think the farther removed that we are from the trade, when I look at it from San Antonio's perspective, I'm a little more cool with it. Like, I was certainly pretty surprised by it when it happened. And look, man, a decent amount of teams, this is just my guess, would not have done that move. They would have given Dejounte the contract, and they would have went from there. And just to go back to that contract, I mean, Dejounte's going to get a lot of money from Atlanta after next season or whenever they agree to that extension. And they already gave DeAndre Hunter a deal that eclipses $20 million per season for, the next 4 years after this one. So they're not like completely locked into the team they're going to be, but especially given the picks they gave up in the move, I would say they're not super far away from what they're going to be when Trae Young is like 27 years old.